Welcome to the Flow State Podcast, where we're all about finding balance. We're your hosts, Monica Groney
and Nora Candido. Now let's get into the flow.
Welcome back, Flow State Podcast listeners. We are so excited to bring you a very special guest today. We have Cynthia, who you may know from Instagram as the Period Nutritionist. She is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and she supports women in getting their period back. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me. I am super excited to be here and chat with you guys.
Amazing. I think today's topic is one that the audience is going to love. I know I receive a lot of questions about this on my personal Instagram, to Maria's Instagram, and Nora, I think you could probably say the same.
Yeah, definitely. Missing periods is one of the most common issues that I see, and I think just normalizing it can happen, and we're gonna just chat through all of that today, what that looks like, some tips and things that are most common that we see in helping individuals get their periods back, and speaking to the expert about these things.
Cynthia, would you maybe just share a little bit about the background of how you got into this work, and what it is exactly that you really focus on with your clients?
Absolutely. So I'm going to try to put this in maybe just a couple minutes because I could literally speak the whole podcast on the connection between myself and the work that I do. So this all started for me, you guys. I can't remember the year time frame, but probably over 10 years ago. And I was in this place of, I think, where majority of the world is, where we're like, okay, I have to be healthy. So I have to, eat really healthy. I have to exercise every day. And the way I relieve my stress is via exercise, because that's what everyone says to do. So, so I did that. And I want to say, I'm trying to think time frame here. I was always into exercise and eating healthy. And I decided, well, I didn't even know there was a profession at that time. Now, this is going back. I've been a dietitian for, I think 13, 14 years, somewhere like that. I usually say over 10 because then that just makes me sound sort of old. But I guess I'm seasoned, right? I'm seasoned, more experience. Anyway, so I went to school to be a dietitian, and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I can tell people how to eat and what to do and how to lose weight. And from a very young age, I grew up watching my mom be very quote unquote healthy, watching what she ate, exercising all the time, making body comments about herself. And she never projected it on me, though. I just want to put that out there. It was never like, Cynthia, you can't eat this, or you can't eat that, or you need to exercise or lose weight or whatever. I mean, she would literally give me cake for breakfast if I wanted it. So then flash forward, became a dietitian. I went into the clinical arena while also doing a little private practice and helping people lose weight and quote unquote get healthy. It never felt right to me. And so during the periods after becoming a dietitian and getting ready for my wedding, because we have to look our best on our wedding day, that means
gotta shred it for the wedding.
Yes. So that means lots of exercise, lots of discipline. So I got married, continued to do the exercise, the yo-yo dieting of losing weight. I was an avid CrossFitter. And then I was like, well, I think it's about time I want to have some babies. But even before that, you guys, I had this intuition that there was just something not right with my period. I was on birth control for years because of quote unquote irregular periods. And, looking back, I'm like, it was because I was too active. But so I came off the pill, no period. Now, I spent 5 years, you guys, trying to figure out why my period was missing. I was diagnosed with PCOS. I was told by fertility doctors, like, well, you're not getting a period. You need fertility meds to make this happen. So I was like at a point where at that time with the fertility docs, I was like, no, I'm not quite ready to have babies. But I mean, I guess if this is what I got to do to figure out why my period's missing, so be it. So then I decided not to take that for an answer. Finally found a doctor that appropriately diagnosed me with hypothalamic amenorrhea. And then the denial set in because I'm like, this doesn't sound like me. And we'll probably get into this a little bit later on in our talk, but why I struggled with that diagnosis, not only as a dietitian, but just as an individual who really prided herself on her identity of being fit and healthy. So then I had my first baby, and I had ended up using fertility treatment because I at that time I was like spent 5 years. I'm like, I'm exhausted. I just want to have a baby like yesterday. And then my second baby I conceived naturally because I ended up getting my cycle back naturally. So, and at that time after I had my second baby, I was talking to my then sister-in-law, and she's like, why don't you like specialize? You know, because I was already doing like I was somehow organically it happened where I was starting to help women that had had HA. And this was even before I started my business. And then she's like, why don't you just go into business for women that are missing their periods? And I'm like, huh. I was like, yeah, because there's such a need. Not only do these women not know what's going on with them like I did, but the medical stuff out there where doctors and other practitioners don't know about this. I'm like, there is a real need here, a huge need. And so after that light bulb went on, the rest is history. I decided to, start an Instagram page, help spread awareness, starting seeing more clients one on one. Then I turned it into a group because community is just so, 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 so essential to healing HA. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's kind of how it came about. So a little bit of, being a dietitian, not feeling right in my career path, and then also experiencing this myself. So yeah, I know that was probably longer than I wanted to make it, but and I left a lot out.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's hard to collapse it all into a minute or so summary, and yeah, it's just so common for us dietitians like having that experience. And thank you for sharing that. And obviously, it just allows you to be a better practitioner and person to help support your community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so many things that you said, I feel like are so relatable, and our audience is going to be like, yes, like we've talked about it before of doctors jumping to fertility meds. Obviously, we've talked about birth control here, and it's just everyone we talk to who's ended up specializing in women's health and menstrual care, our stories are like all so intertwined, and it just makes me so excited that there are these communities now, these women who are all working towards changing that narrative. And I'm really hopeful that like the next kind of generation can be like, oh, like I got the care that I needed, and it wasn't this experience of just given some solution that was kind of out there. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Yes, yes. I literally, you guys, pinch myself every day. I get to wake up and do this and not only impact women directly, but also indirectly by, social media and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. I think we can also all relate to, at least like some of us millennial women of the era of our parents eating the like fat free food. And there was like this whole food movement, right? Around losing weight and eating fat free food that, so it's just like nothing was on our side at that time, and our poor parents for having to go through that too because there weren't any resources then.
no, not at all. And this stuff is, I mean, as we know, it's a lot of times it's generational. And I don't mean like the actual missing period, even though I found that a lot of my clients were like, "Well, my mom never had a regular cycles either, or had trouble getting pregnant." But I'm just talking about the food relationship, behaviors and stuff like that. That's passed down from generation to generation. So you're right. Like our parents only, I like to say, you only know what you know when you know it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's so spot on and cool that like we can change that for our future. Not even if you have children or not, like we are doing this work to hopefully impact those future generations too. So it's pretty cool.
It is so cool.
I was going to say, I would love for us to just dive into what HA is, like for somebody who's never even heard this formal term before, if they're like, wait, missing periods has a name. Can you just talk us through like what that is?
So I want to talk about HA, and then I also I want you guys, if I don't circle back to it, to have me circle back to spectrums of HA, because there is so pretty much. Let me define hypothalamic amenorrhea. So pretty much hypothalamic amenorrhea is a condition characterized by the absence of menstruation. Okay, so when I talk about the spectrum, it's we might talk about you having sort of HA, but we can't really call it HA because the definition is lack or absence of. So HA, hypothalamic amenorrhea, is characterized by the absence of menstruation due to dysfunction in your hypothalamus. So this is the part of the brain that regulates the menstrual cycle, among other things. This condition is often really associated with low energy availability, aka not enough food, lots of exercise. And I just want to kind of asterisk small print there, you may not feel like you're excessively exercising, because when I had HA, I didn't. I was like, I work out every day. Like, that's what's recommended. So you may not think it's excessive, but to your body, it is. So then there's stress. And I often get the question like, well, isn't HA, can it be caused by stress? First, we got to stop looking for a way out to not change our disorderly behaviors with food and exercise. But two, yes, your cycle can be impacted by stress. However, if your period's been missing for like 3+ months, girlfriend, that is more than stress. And so, again, it can be a combo of these. Pretty much, though, your body does not have enough energy, but then also the excessive exercise is causing stress to the body that we are not able to see. So that's important to know. And, it's going to affect females, women, people with uteruses, and at reproductive age. And this HA could start. I've had clients, you guys, that have never had one real menstrual cycle in their entire life. And so this can start way younger. And it's very prevalent in athletes, but really, it is so much more prevalent than we know. And I have a few like little stats here. And I can also share a research article that I pulled this from. But so FHA, so functional hypothalamic amenorrhea, is responsible for a third of the cases of secondary amenorrhea of reproductive age. And so that is estimated about 1.62 million women in the US and 17.4 million women worldwide. Okay, so, but here's the thing, these are the women that actually know they have HA.
No, yeah.
Right.
Right? It's not the woman that's been on birth control for years, has no idea her period's missing. It's not the woman like myself in the past where she's searching for answers and can't get anything. And I could probably name like a million other scenarios. But so yeah, I know that was a long drawn out like what's HA, but there's so many like different avenues that I have to like branch off to really get this whole full effect of what it truly is.
Is there a differentiation of HA versus just like amenorrhea? And like, is HA more the energy deficiency part of it, or are they the same?
Yes. So, I mean, someone could have, a lack of a period due to menopause. I can't speak to other conditions out there, but there's premature ovarian failure, premature ovarian insufficiency. So there's different things that could, but what hypothalamic amenorrhea is, that directly characterized by this hypothalamus being impacted because there is quote unquote stress on the body in the form of low energy availability or excessive exercise combination and stress. And so what I wanted to say about the HA spectrum, right? So I've worked with hundreds of clients across the world, and actually was talking with one of my colleagues about this. And we're seeing all these spectrums. So what I mean by is there's women that have a kind of spectrum of HA that could have regular consistent cycles but not be ovulating. So that is one thing. We need ovulation to have a full on like healthy menstrual cycle. And if you ever want to have a baby, you have to ovulate. So there's a lot of women out there that's how their body's being affected. It's not like a full shutdown of, all the sex hormones, but it's just impacting ovulation. So these, amazingly fit, quote unquote, healthy women go into the doctors. They're like, I can't get pregnant. I've been trying for, X amount. I have a regular period. Then they seek fertility treatment, which I have to say, in my experience working with women that have, infertility related to HA or a spectrum of HA, there hasn't been one, but actually there's been one doctor that I can think of, I don't know the doctor's name, that told my client, like, yeah, you need to eat more and rest more. Most of them are like, okay, well, we know you're not going to get pregnant with Clomid, so we got to go straight to injectables. If those don't work, we're going to go to IVF. So, that I don't even want to say, I guess I can say it's a knowledge deficit out there, but we have to remember when we seek fertility treatment, like the doctor is trying to get you the outcome that you're desiring, which is a baby, but hopefully, you can find medical professionals out there that'll listen to you and hopefully learn from their patients, which I think is really important. So that ovulation thing, super important. We're seeing that with, I guess, women with on the spectrum of HA. There's also short luteal phase defect. So that could also be caused by not enough food, not enough rest. So just because you're not maybe fully missing a period, doesn't mean you can't be suffering from something on the spectrum, which could eventually lead to a full-on amenorrhea. But, genetics plays a huge role because there's women out there that have BMIs of like very low. We'll just say, I'm not going to throw a number out there, and they still have regular periods. Whether or not they're ovulating, I have no idea. But, but also I just want to kind of side note that if you do have a regular period and you have a super low BMI, suffering from an eating disorder, disordered eating, it doesn't deem you healthy because you're still menstruating. Just means that your body decided like, oh, well, I will use some energy to have her menstruate, but I might be, having this affected in other areas.
Yeah, so kind of summarizing that, it's basically if you can still be on the spectrum of HA and bleed. Just for anyone listening, that's I think what you're saying here is like you can still get a period, but maybe you're not ovulating, or maybe your luteal phase is really short, and that's just kind of on the spectrum of HA potentially. Obviously, not diagnosing anyone here, but and potentially that could move towards amenorrhea and missing or losing your period, and obviously can be affecting fertility and just overall health. And this plays into, maybe this is a little off topic, but this also plays into that some of that like bone health issues that women see as well.
Bone health and you guys heart health. A colleague of mine, Dr. Christiana Schufelt, she is a professor and chair over at the Mayo Clinic in Florida, and she's really studying hypothalamic amenorrhea, and she's finding a lot of correlation between heart health, which, by the way, in the US is the number one killer of women. So she's finding a lot of correlation between low estrogen levels and heart health, and then also cortisol levels, in heart health. So you may not see this right away. You're not going to, probably if you've been in the HA, place of overexercising, under eating for like a year, you're probably not going to have a heart attack tomorrow. I'm not saying that, so I don't want to scare anybody, but they're finding long-term health, like, women that are in their 60s that have had low estrogen levels for so long are negatively impacted with heart health, increasing so much cardiovascular dysfunction.
Is there a correlation then to like cholesterol levels as well? I mean, I know cholesterol and heart health are so intertwined.
Yes, a lot of women will say, my cholesterol levels are high. And this is like, when you're knee deep in it. So that's a part of it as well in the overall heart disease. So the body is just not able to excrete the quote unquote bad cholesterol because of the low estrogen levels. And so it's, circulating around in the blood.
I'm taking notes over here.
Yes. And so
I was going to say it's so much deeper than that
it
too,
is.
because our body makes its own cholesterol. So it's not even like from the dietary perspective, like, yeah.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that.
There's a huge liver connection. There's thyroid connection. Like, so many things. And, with just
Ultimately, it's like a pathway of elimination issue.
partly.
Yeah. And you know what? The scary thing is that a typical quote unquote healthy woman, so the walking, Dr. Gaudiani calls, women that are the walking unwell. Like they look well, right? But so they go into the doctors, they're like, maybe fit and healthy. And they're like, I have, doctors like, you have high cholesterol levels. You need to watch what you're eating, which is the worst thing you could say to a woman that is suffering from HA because she's already really, really, really watching what she's eating. And I've seen many of my clients, their cholesterol levels improve, when they do heal their HA. And then, of course, there's always the chance of hereditary, high cholesterol as well. So you'll be able to rule that out with healing your HA and getting your estrogen levels back to normal limits. So then you can rule out, is it, familial or is it caused by, my lack of estrogen?
I definitely have a differing just with the genetic side of cholesterol. I've seen like really interesting stuff on that, but we should talk about that at some point because I know, Monica, you're interested in that piece too.
I'm one of those high cholesterol people, so I'm always curious, and I'm always like, when I'm hearing heart health and stuff, I'm correlating all of that. So,
but what I was going to say too with the heart health piece of this, like in low energy availability, all of these things are muscles. So if we're under fueling and we're not able to get our muscles the fuel that they need, like at the end of the day, that is the primary place that we need to start for majority of the things. Like that's the first thing that I investigate for all of my clients is, are you eating enough? And Cynthia, to your point too, with you might live in a thinner body or your BMI may have been this certain range for however long, but that might not be what your body actually wants to live at. And that's really important. So you may feel like you're eating enough to sustain your current body type, but you may actually need more to send the signals to your body of, okay, now we can finally prioritize all of these extra things that require energy, whereas before we were just living on survival mode, right?
Pretty much. And, I'm glad you mentioned the whole muscle thing, Nora, about, it's affecting the muscle. And I see a lot of my clients and then, of course, my followers, they're like, oh my gosh, my heart rate, right? So your heart rate tends to be really low. And many doctors will be like, oh, because you're health and fit and you're like, exercising. And no, it's not. It's because your body doesn't have enough energy to give your heart the proper fuel. And then in addition to, they may also see very high spikes in their heart rate when they absolutely do nothing. Like they'd be sitting down, they'd walk across the room, and their heart rate would maybe go, I don't know, kind of varies on how high, but it kind of goes higher than like, oh, this is weird, I'm not even doing anything. And again, that goes back to the muscle. So that's really important to note, that it's not only affecting the I guess what's the word I'm looking for, like the chemical makeup of your body, but like also the physical of the muscle part.
I'm curious too, is there any correlation with HRV? I know everyone now who like wears a wearable is super familiar with HRV. Is there have you heard anything around that?
So HRV, remind me of that abbreviation.
Heart rate variability.
Yes, there is a lot of heart.
And maybe there's not.
Yeah,
But
there is the heart rate of HRV. There's definitely a connection with, I don't want to say it's HA. It's because your energy levels are in the tank. You have no food to support. And then your heart muscles are, kind of not being prioritized. So you will definitely see some variability. And again, this is noted by doctors, at least that low resting heart rate, to be quote unquote healthy. So that's a big misconception that.
I'd be curious to see about HRV just because I feel like that's kind of like a stress meter. Like at
I was
least
just gonna say, yeah,
in my
stress.
own body, I'm like when there's higher stress, whether it be exercise or even emotional stress, it's like my HRV will be super high. So that I'd be curious.
So HRV when we're stressed is low. And then when we're in like a rebound state, we're high.
Yeah. No, I bet there is some there has to be to energy levels. And then too, it's like, it comes down to how does the body perceive stress? There's women out there that, again, won't lose their periods because of how crazy their genetics are. But at the end of the day, something is being affected if we're not eating enough. And also, I want to say, Nora, to your point, where I see a lot of women get hung up in this whole like, oh, so Cynthia, I'm hearing like now I need to eat more, I need to rest more to get my period back. And then they do it. They're like, okay, I'm eating more, I'm resting more. But the disconnect lies, and this is where I see all my clients that are like wanting to, work with me directly one-on-one or in my group coaching program, is that they cannot connect what they think they need and what their body actually needs. And there's so many reasons. Biggest fear, weight gain. But yeah, what we think we need and what our bodies actually need are two different things. And that's so important to remember.
I see it so much too with just conditioned our bodies to ignore all of these internal sensations for years and years and years of like ignoring those natural hunger cues. So we're so disconnected from our bodies, and also just the world and in that we live in. Like there's a million and one distractions all the time. And how can we like return and remember how all of those innate and intuitive signals from our body? So like relearning, and that's another thing I really focus on, is like, okay, when you wake up in the morning, can you notice how it feels to have a full bladder? Now you go to the bathroom. How does it feel when you've relieved yourself? Just beginning to help that brain-body connection again, because that's all the hypothalamus does, right? It's the main center in the brain that connects to the rest of the body. So we have all these different axes, not just for our cycle, but for our adrenal glands, for all other organs in the system. So just helping to demonstrate like you still have those connection points, and just bringing some mindfulness to it to help bring things back online. Like I completely see that being possible.
Yes, it totally is possible. We become so disconnected with our bodies when we are trying to be quote unquote healthy, or at least, be thin or whatever it may be, your driving motivation. And I can tell you what it felt like for me when I was experiencing this was that I lived separately from my body, if that like makes sense. And I was not one with my body, which might sound, I guess, maybe, hopefully not too woo-woo for your audience. But once I was
We are all
able,
about the woo.
good. Once I started connecting my mind with my body, and like you said, how does this make you feel? Like, there's so many of my clients and women out there that are like, oh my gosh, like, what if, and all the fears and the disconnect with what we've been fed for years and years, what we shouldn't do. Like, oh, you're hungry? Oh, well, chew a piece of gum, drink some water. You can't possibly be hungry. You just ate. And I lived that for so long. I'm like, why am I hungry? I just ate. Okay, Cynthia, you had like a salad with grilled chicken and vegetables. Course you're hungry. But that's at that time, like I didn't know any better. And I don't know, Nora, if you can relate to what you learned as a dietitian, like in college. Like to me, that was just a recipe for more disordered eating.
Oh, everything. Yeah. Our education is so sad. So sad. And truly everything that I practice is what I have learned post-grad. And I think it's really important as dietitians, we have this understanding of how the body systems work. We can think through things very critically, but it's not practical what we learned, unfortunately. But, oh, totally. Like, so many old school, nutrition is such an updated and evolving science. Like every single day there are new things coming out, and we just have to stay abreast of those things. And our curriculums were made 50 plus years ago, where like not a lot of that information is still relevant, which is so sad.
Cynthia, you said something that I'm curious to kind of follow up on, of women that you work with will start eating more and start resting more, but like there's still not improvements because they've lost what connection to what they actually need. I'm curious to kind of hear how you help them build that connection back?
Absolutely. So yeah, pretty much at least currently, women that work with me, they have come to this place where they've tried it on their own, right? They've started eating more, they started resting more, and they're like, what in the heck gives? Like, I'm at like my last degree. And so what I do is I say exactly that. What you think you need and what your body needs are two different things. And then we talk about like, what do you think's holding you back? And I would say 10 out of 10 times it's weight gain. It's the fear of weight gain. And it's also the fear of like, this is all they know, like exercising and being fit and healthy. That's who they are. So it's an identity component as well. So we start working together and we really start to look at what is missing from this nutrition component. So over the years, I have developed a method or framework, sort of say, to address the nutrition component. So are they eating frequently enough? Is their macronutrient distribution appropriate? So those are two examples. And then we look at the movement component. So are they still exercising too much? The frequency, the duration, the intensity. So we take a peek at that. And having these women still continue some form of exercise in my group coaching program is important to me, important to them. If they're like, I want to give it up, totally fully, that's fine too. But I also think it does have beneficial effects to the brain if done in the right frequency, duration, and intensity. So we start there, and then the third is the mindset component. What is their why for wanting to continue to exercise? Why are they fearful of weight gain? Where did this begin? Where did this start? So my hope is, yes, the desired outcome is a period. That's why they want to hire me. But what I secretly am trying to do is not only get them a period back, but help their periods come back month after month, but also improve their quality of life, because they're just, anyone who's been in this disordered place and is no longer there, you feel like a robot when you're there. Your life is just so, what's the word? I don't know. It's like cardboard. It's just, there's no color to it. There's no fun. There's no joy, because you're in, yeah, very, very. And so, that is my hope, is that they not only get their periods back, but they really improve their quality of life and get their life back so they can live the life that they were meant to live.
So important.
So does that help answer your question, Monica, about, my approach?
Definitely.
And the connection. Yeah. And the constant reassurance is so important. Constant reassurance from me and then the community, you guys. I did private coaching for probably a good couple years before I went into the group place, and the community and just the women that are going through it, like right then and there. Like they all know I've been through it, but something about like, I'm kind of like their, leader and their cheerleader, or something about having other women going through the same exact thing at the same exact time. It's just so empowering, and it normalizes this whole eating more and resting more while the entire world is doing the opposite.
Yeah, I have a group program as well and have found that to just be it's so powerful, and also just the validation that you're not experiencing this alone. When I had my hormone issues, it was all like post birth control, and I felt like my body was broken and that I was the only person my age going through this. And at that time, I was one of the only people in my group that decided to go off of birth control at the time that I did. So I was kind of experiencing it alone, but I was like, I'm a healthy person. Like, why do I have acne all of a sudden? I've never had skin issues. Why is my stomach hurting all the time? Like, to go from one experience to another. But yeah, that community aspect of just having people there to resonate with you and provide that support. And also, my group program is for a variety of different hormone things, and I have different people at different life stages too. And it's cool to see like almost parenting happening and like reverse parenting too. And it's really beautiful just to see that kind of sisterhood and support that. Like, we just need more of that in our day-to-day. If only we could just show up for each other like that every day.
Yeah. Our world would definitely be a much more amazing place.
Is that a period of time, speaking of birth control and coming off birth control, that you see a lot of women discover HA just because it's been covered up for so long, and then they come off and they realize they actually don't really even have a period. Is that kind of like very common?
Yes, yes, it is so common. I would say definitely the majority of my clients for sure. It was me. And it's definitely a lot of women that struggle with infertility because they're like, okay, I'm married now. Like, let's do the thing, let's make the babies. And then it's like, okay, where's my period? Yeah, or I'm getting a period and I don't know what's going on. Everything's okay with my partner, and chances are they aren't ovulating or the luteal phase is too short. So, um, yeah, you see that a lot. And the thing is, those coming off birth control, I mean, if you have no underlying hormonal issues, and I'm going to just speak specifically to HA, like if you're adequately fueling your body and you don't have any other hormonal issues, like you should get a period like the next month, maybe a little after, depending. But it shouldn't be like, huh, my period hasn't, I went off the pill, it's been 3 months, where's my period? It shouldn't be you going to the doctor telling them that and then being like, huh, well, just give it a few more months. Like, no, 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 no. And that happened to me. Oh, just give it a few more months. If not, we'll take progesterone, or we'll put you back on the pill to kickstart it. And that does not kickstart anything. It is an external synthetic hormone you're putting in your body, and it is doing nothing but potentially making you, oh gosh, there's so many side effects, and I don't even want to go into it. But there's no benefit into doing that. It's not kickstarting anything. It's not regulating anything, and so forth. So.
What's like the general timeline that you do see to regain your period?
That's a good question. So I can speak to the women that I, directly work with. I can tell you in Dr. Nicola Sykes or Dr. Nicola Rinaldi, the book No Period Now What, I think she quotes 6 months is an average for people regaining their cycles. I'm not sure the data in which that is put on. I usually tell my clients it's usually like an 8 to 10 week thing. But again, that's an average. So it could, I've had women get their period back in a week after working together. I've had them take 6 months. And so what I find across the board, but also there's some outliers, that women that have had pretty bad eating disorders or were at a pretty low weight for a while tend to take longer. Uh, that's the majority. However, I've had women that are at quote unquote lower weights, have had eating disorders, regain their period much more quickly. So then, 6 month mark. So, it varies. But what I like to say is those women that have been working toward period recovery, they've already created this, somewhat solid foundation for themselves. Those are the women I tend to see that, start to get them back quicker than those that are like kind of like, oh, I just found out today I had HA and I want to dive right back into things. So if that kind of helps timeline, but I always, that's a question I get from every single woman I talk to on the call before, maybe they're considering coaching. And I like to say, listen, I, have over the years collected lots of data from women that, are experiencing this, which it's just not out there in the science. It's just not yet anyways. I hope it is soon, but, I can't make any promises on that. So, based on the experience I've seen, with so many women is that if they show up and do the work. And that's like the eating enough, the resting enough, the mindset work. And I am there to support you. My team is there. Uh, you're going to get your period back. It's just, I like to say, cooking time varies. I will give you the recipe, but the cooking time can vary.
Love that.
Yeah. We're all starting at such different baselines and healing journeys. Like everyone's a bio individual, everyone's body experience has been different. So it's like there's so many variables.
So many.
Yeah, I think this is really insightful information for people, and just again, hopefully they're feeling some validation. Um, yeah, I think that this is a really important topic.
Okay, we've talked a lot about HA. Something else that I wanted to ask you about that we want to discuss, and I'm hearing more about it a lot, and maybe my head's just in the sand on this topic, but I'd love to talk about RED-S, the relative energy deficiency syndrome.
Yes. And so that typically I like to say it's pretty much like HA. But
I was going to say, what is
really,
the difference?
yeah. So it's really more of a term used with athletes. But here's the thing, like I can tell you, I remember learning about Red S/HA in college, which was like literally a paragraph long in my medical nutrition therapy book.
It was not called Red S at the time.
No, and I'm like, it was it female athlete triad, I believe. I think that's what it was called. So because red S can happen with men too. But I just remember saying like I don't fit this bill of like we'll call it female athlete triad slash red S. And I'm like, I'm not an athlete, right? But you guys,
We're
I was
all
trained.
athletes. We're
Yes,
all
I was
athletes.
training like an athlete. Like I was literally training like up to 2 hours a day, almost every day. Like some athletes don't even train that much. But I'm like, I'm not an athlete, right? So anyways, I don't want to say like it's tending to athletes only. It's just a term you hear more in the athletic community. So red S is a condition that occurs when there's an imbalance between energy intake and energy expenditure. So meaning you are not eating enough to compensate for the amount of activity that you're putting out. So that's going to lead to low energy availability to support the body's physiological function. So it's often affects athletes, but again, what is an athlete? And it can really impact their performance, their health, their overall well-being, and there's bone health issues, impaired immune function. But again, these are all things, guys, that can happen with HA. I just think it's a term that's more thrown around with the athletic community, but also Red S does include the guy side part of it. So low testosterone levels in males. But everything else that comes along with red S, like fatigue, impaired recovery time, mood, cognition changes, immune function, bone density decrease, increased risk of fractures, can all happen with, in the realm of HA.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely something I've seen more on the athlete side of things, like the Olympic Committee talking about it, and all of those areas, but it seems very intertwined.
Yeah, so intertwined. But I also think it's just I don't want to say a knowledge deficit. I don't know what I want to call it, but I just think coaches are like the front line people to these athletes, and like Olympic athletes losing their periods as endurance runners or something like that. It's so common, like, oh, that's just what happens. And no, or these women are on birth control pills and they don't know that these athletes aren't actually getting a period. So if the coaches don't know and this is quote unquote normalized, then we got a big disconnect here.
Yeah. I have a friend who did a documentary on all of this. She's a North Face athlete. She's an ultra runner. And she did a whole documentary on menstrual cycles and how like she didn't have one for so long and her male coaches never asked or like cared. So it's interesting having been myself in the athlete world and seeing some of that come to light. I think I'm hopeful that that changes, and it's almost like I'd be curious to see what trainer education potentially changes because I think it needs to.
Oh, it totally needs to.
Monica and I were both gymnasts growing up, and when I stopped gymnastics, within 6 months, I got my cycle for the first time. Like, it was so evident that it was preventing me from entering into puberty, but it was never talked about. Never talked about. Like, I remember some of the older girls getting their period, and like they would wear shorts on the days that they had their bleed, and like it felt kind of like a cool girls club that I was not a part of. But just not, it was not talked about in that like you should be like, that's completely normal for a 15-year-old to have a period.
Yeah, yeah. And then if, this teen goes to the doctor's usually like, "Oh, well, you're super active." Like we see that a lot, in kids your age being really active, and it's not normal at at all.
I think all of this has been like so amazing. And I think a lot of our audience is going to resonate with this and tune in to some of the things that we've talked about. So I'm really grateful for you sharing.
Yes, I am so grateful for you guys having me here because this is so near and dear to my heart. And I don't want to see anyone out there struggle like I did for years trying to find answers. And then not even the answer part, but it's really important that we change the way we view food, the way we view our bodies, the way we view exercise, and really dig deep into what is the most meaningful thing in our life. Because I promise you guys, it's not your body. It is not your body. There's so many other things in your life. And if you can unmask this and uncover the why behind why you have controlled your food and your exercise to such a way to lose your menstrual cycle, which I now look at my missing period as a blessing in disguise because I don't know if I would have addressed all my behaviors. So there's so much more to life than what we appear on the outside, and so much more on the inside that you may not have even been able to scratch the surface with because of we're just so caught up in the day to day of what we look like. Which again, it's nobody's fault. It is nobody's fault because there's so many contributing factors that made us view exercise, our bodies, and food the way we do today.
Okay, we love for our listeners to get to know you a little bit better at the end of each session that we do. So we have just a few little lightning round questions, if that's okay.
Great. I love these.
What is your favorite meal to cook or consume if you're not?
I have to say, some sweet potatoes. And what I usually do with those is I will chop them up in little cubes. I will put some olive oil on them, some cinnamon, and kosher salt. And I will roast them in the oven. And then I will make salmon, and it's called Parmesan crusted salmon. And it is, oh my gosh, it's so good. I will make this Parmesan crust, put it on the salmon, and finish it off 2 minutes in the broiler where it makes a nice crust. And then typically, depending what vegetable I have, I might serve a vegetable or I may not because I don't eat vegetables every day. You can survive without eating vegetables every day. Just want to throw that out there. So yes, that is my favorite meal to eat or make at this current time.
Love that. Yummy. I want your salmon crust recipe, please.
I will share it. Absolutely.
Are you someone who prefers your AM or PM routine and share a little bit about that routine?
Oh my gosh, AM all day. All day. I have to wake up early. I do feel, which I'm so less rigid than I used to be when I was not getting enough fuel. FYI, your rigidity will decrease if you get enough fuel. Um, but morning time is really important to me. It's quiet, it's dark. My kids are still sleeping. I have a 5 and 7 year old. I'm refreshed. I feel my most creative. So I do, though, I have a little bit of difficulty in the morning because I do like to do some movement in the morning. I also like to meditate or journal in the morning, and I also like to work in the morning. And so sometimes I have this conflicting, like, but I like to do all these things, but I know I don't have all the time in the morning to do them. So what I try to do is do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, working out, Tuesday, Thursday, journal, meditation. And then if I miss a day of either or, maybe make it up on the weekend. Seldomly do I sleep in, but I usually go to sleep fairly early because morning time is so important to me.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Like, I wake up with so much energy and just want to dive into like work, but I also want to journal, but I also want to like exercise. And so it's like, oh,
It's
like the
such a
day
battle.
started. Yeah.
Hear that. What is your favorite period product?
My favorite period product. I'm trying to think. So personally, I've tried the cups, the menstrual cups. Wasn't really a fit, or maybe I didn't get the right one, but I've also had two babies vaginally, so I don't know if like things just aren't quite right down there anymore.
I'm sure they're
But
perfect however
gosh,
they are.
yes. So I wouldn't say I have a Actually, you know what? I do. When I have cramps, what I use is those disposable heating pads. I think they're called like TheraHeat or something. Um, that is my favorite thing. I always have them on deck. I only need one because I usually only get a little bit of cramping like the first 1 to 2 days. I would have to say that is probably my favorite. But I haven't delved too much into cups and what do you call them? The period underwear or something like that. But I'm always open to learning and trying different products.
The little heat pads are great. Being somewhere that's cold, I always just use like a foot warmer, like a stick on foot warmer.
That's a good idea. That is a good idea.
Same,
Well, that's
same.
if I run out of them, I do have some foot and hand warmers because I live in a cold place. So, thank you for that tip and trick.
I was gonna say you'll have to try the that time of the month tea from Maria because it's so warming, like from the inside out, and it has ginger and raspberry leaf and all these things. It's like it feels so good, especially for cramps.
Oh, that's good to know. I love a good tea. I love a good tea.
I'll send you some, Cynthia, for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, last question is, and this can be health related or business related or whatever, but what is one book that has had a significant impact on you?
Oh gosh, the first one that comes to mind, you guys, was the book, and this kind of filters into personal, professional, and mom life. And I feel like I need to pick it up because I haven't read it in a while. But The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown.
Yes, I love that book.
Yes, like that was the first book that I think I read as far as like, I don't want to call it self-help, but like self-exploration or whatever you want to call, when I was kind of really delving out of this disordered, behaviors. And then I read that. I'm like, there's another way to like live, and I don't have to be this crazy perfectionist. Yeah, I'd have to say that book for sure.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's on my bookshelf for sure.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. I'm really looking forward to listeners just having access to this information. I would love for you to share one way that people can work with you. And obviously, we can find you on Instagram or anywhere else, your podcast. Where else can people plug into you?
Absolutely. So 2024, I'm not sure when we'll be hearing about this podcast, but come January 2024, I am releasing my new Eat to Regain Your Period group coaching program with lots of updates, lots of research based on client experience. And that is a group coaching community with myself in there and a community other women. So that in hopes you can get your period back in 8 to 10 weeks. And you can find me. I mostly live on Instagram and I'm at period.nutritionist, but you can also find me on TikTok. And then I also have a podcast called the Period Recovery Podcast. So that's where you guys can find me.
Amazing. Well, listeners, please go check out Cynthia, follow her, and thank you so much for joining us today, Cynthia.
Thank you guys so much.